Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Today, believe it or not, I have another sleep expert on. I know I have a lot of sleep experts on this podcast, but it is that important. And today I'm talking with nationally certified pediatric sleep consultant, Jessica Berk. And she is a former sleep-deprived mom herself who turned into a big kid sleep expert. And yes, once kids get out of the crib, believe it or not, sleep issues can get crazy. And I'm sure you're all aware. So today we're going to address those bigger kids. Welcome, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me, Jamie.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about, I love stories of, like you became a sleep expert because like you were screwing it up, right?
Yeah. I think like most
entrepreneurs, fix me, and then now I can fix everybody.
Right. Yes. Like most entrepreneurs, this is like from a place of my own personal need. But yeah, right. When my 3-year-old moved to a bed, and we thought, oh, she just turned 3. She's ready for a bed. Yeah, no, she was not. It's okay to keep your kid in the crib for as long as humanly possible. But yeah, she moved to a bed, and then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. I mean, she'd slept well in the crib, but all of a sudden it was like the freedom of being able to get up. It's like I couldn't get her to do the bedtime routine. She's running out of the room, coming and trying to come sleep in my bed in the middle of the night. I'm like, what is happening? And since she'd been sleeping for a while, being woken up all the time, I was like, I can't live like this. And there was no one, this was 8 years ago, and there was no one talking about big kids. Like so many people talk about baby sleep and infant sleep, and that's very important, obviously. But there was no one talking to me and my needs. And so I took the rather drastic step of getting certified as a sleep coach, just like you said, as a way to figure out my own problems. And so then when I was able to get my daughter back sleeping again, I was like, okay, like other parents are dealing with this. So I know that I can help them too. So that kind of started my journey. So Awesome Little Sleepers was born about 8 years ago.
Oh, okay. So you're Awesome Little Sleepers. That kind of slipped by there. Yeah. Okay, so let's start off this conversation with a friendly disagreement.
Oh, okay.
Because in my work, I find I totally disagree with keeping them in cribs for as long as humanly possible, only because we are expecting autonomy in all other areas. And when the first thing you do is take your child out of their cage, which let's call it a cage because it is, right? A well-meaning one.
Yeah.
But that I'm seeing kids struggle with autonomy. And like they, mommy, do it with potty training, with dressing themselves, with becoming sort of a big kid. So in my experience, every kid discovers that freedom. So even if you duct tape them to the crib and keep them in there till they're 10, they're still going to get up. And yes, can they understand the rules? Sure. Are they going to obey them? No. So,
right.
So I always maintain that it's like, I have actually found it's easier younger. You know what I mean? Because they almost get a force field. They don't know they can get out of bed, and you can do the cause and effect of just putting them back. But, yeah, you don't, I mean, do you find that like all of a sudden, cause I have kids who are starting to read and they're still in a crib, and I'm like, I don't know. It's like, or they're climbing out themselves, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's a couple things that I tell parents to look for. Certainly if they're climbing out of the crib, then you either need to figure out a way to keep them in there safely, or it's time to move them to a bed, of course. But, I really encourage parents, obviously, because I'm looking at this through a sleep lens, right?
Right.
I encourage parents to make sure their kids have good sleep habits when they're in the crib, because if they don't, like if they're already dealing with a child in the crib who can't sleep through the night, requires mom to stand there and rub their back the whole time, and then is crying in the middle of the night and mom has to come pick them up and take them to their bed. If they're already dealing with all those kind of sleep struggles in the crib, those are only going to be amplified when they move to a bed. So that's where my advice comes from. But you're right. I mean, there's plenty of times where kids, have to move to a bed where they're, let's say, 2 years old, which is pretty young. Maybe there's a new baby on the way or whatever. Right. And then maybe they sleep well in their bed for a while, a couple weeks, a couple months, and then all of a sudden they start to get out of the bed, and the parents start to see the sleep struggles, because it's something about, it's the age of the child, right? It's all of a sudden kids kind of getting more curious, pushing boundaries a little more, getting more adventurous. That comes with the maturity, right? So sometimes that may not happen when they're 2. They're just fine, lay down and go to sleep. But maybe when they're 2.5, closer to 3, they start to kind of rebel against sleep a little bit, which is a natural part of their development. So it's kind of the perfect storm sometimes of the kids' kind of maturity level and the freedom of the open bed. But you're right. Of course, at some time, they do have to move to a bed. And certainly potty is a good time where you want kids to start to have that autonomy.
Yeah. And I do think too, like there is this magic force field. Like I've noticed, like with the younger kids, like it takes them about 6 months to figure out they can even get out of the bed. But I always tell parents too, because it sucks, parents will work really hard on having a really good sleeper. And I don't know why, because like you could go to a party and give your kid, like you could feed your kid really well, right? And then you go to a party and have cake and it doesn't blow food out of the water, but your kid gets sick one time and you let them sleep with you because you want to monitor their breathing. Boom, you're never getting them out of your bed. It's like you erase all your work so quickly with sleep. And so I do feel like there are those, one thing I work with my clients is like, we are just so busy and stressed out. And so that's where boundaries get skewed. So it's this one night where you're like, I've been working on sleep. You know what? Who cares? She can come into my bed. Or they all do the 2:00 in the morning, like come into your bed. Sometimes you don't even know they're there till morning.
Yeah.
Right. And then that boundary gets skewed and then it's like all over.
Yeah, that's so true. I'd say the two biggest like things that kind of kill a good sleep thing going are illness and travel. Because those are typically times where you bend the rules a little bit. So those are certainly instances where sleep can get screwed up. But another thing that I think commonly happens is, especially when people are working on sleep, teaching their kids good sleep habits and their kids doing really well. And so they're like, oh, you're doing great. Maybe tonight, because you keep asking me for a third book, we'll just read a third book tonight because you're doing such a good job. So it's like a well-meaning, like you're doing so great. Sure, let me give in on a few things. But when you start giving in on those few things, that's just like handing your kid an invitation to ask for more things.
Why are we like that? Humans are like that, right? Like say you're training for something in the gym, right? And you're like diet's on point, you're training and you're doing so well. You go out and have martinis and cake. Like, why do we do that, right? Like, whenever something's going well, we're like, I can screw this up.
I know exactly how to screw this up. Yeah. And so you're exactly right. I don't know why it can just take one night, but it really can to screw up kids' sleep habits. But that's why I tell parents, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, your kid is not sick. You're not on vacation. Right. So the best thing that you can do to prevent those things from like totally blowing up your sleep situation is work on those good boundaries and those good sleep habits. Like when you're home, most of the time you're home and it's your regular life. So if you could do that, 90% of the time, 80% of the time, then you have something to fall back on. If you do have that one night where things get skewed, you have less of a chance of it totally blowing everything up.
Yeah. And I find too with people with travel, I've really learned with my clients with all things is to give yourself a buffer. Like I think parents assume like you might go into travel with a really great sleeper and then you're like, oh, this is going to be great. Then maybe on vacation, boundaries are skewed. And then I'll have clients come home Sunday night and the kid has to go to school in the morning. And I'm like, you didn't give yourself a buffer to like get back to like boundaries in real life again.
Yeah. And sometimes it does take, may take a day, especially if your kid's been sick and you've had to care for them overnight or you've been on vacation and, life happens or whatever. Sometimes it does take a night or two to get things back on track. But that's why, again, back to like during your regular life, most of the time, if you have that good routine, it'll be much easier for your kid to fall back on it. It's like if you went on a camping trip and you didn't have coffee one morning, you're going to go home and keep drinking coffee again. It's not like it's going to throw you totally off of drinking
No, I'm going
coffee.
right home from camping. I'm going right home from I'm packing up the car and I'm going home because there's no camping without coffee. No, I got you.
But yeah, if you have that regular habit, right, to come back to, then it's much easier.
Yeah. So what is different? Like besides the kids being in a crib, like what makes the bigger kid sleep different? And what are some tools we can give parents for sleep hygiene, for the bedtime routine, those kinds of things?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference, and I think what parents kind of struggle with kids at this age is if they've done any kind of like sleep training when their kid was a baby, once their kid's older and they start to see kind of sleep things pop up, they may kind of just revert back to thinking about whatever they did when the kid was a baby. Okay. But the main difference is your kid isn't a baby. Like your kid is now 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. They've got opinions. Like, you know, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but like a shitload of opinions.
They have a shitload of opinions.
they are the most opinionated little humans, right? They're not taking no for an answer. They want everything the way that they want it. Yep. And they want control over things, right? In their little lives where they're told what to do all the time, what to wear, what to eat, where to go, when. They just want some control, and they're just pushing boundaries. They're seeing how the world works. Like that's their job. And so when you try to think back to like the old school kind of sleep training methods that you used when your kid was 6 months old, like that's not going to work for you, because when your kid's older, it's less about like implementing some new thing to do to your kid. It's about how to work with your kid in a way that gives a nod to their maturity level, right? Mm-hmm. It gives a nod to their desire for control. And you need to understand as a parent what is making them tick and what is making you tick. And so I really try to show parents that, you know, it takes two to tango, right? Because a lot of parents will say, here's what my kid is doing. And that's like so one-sided. I'm like, I gotcha. Well, then what are you doing?
Dude, you don't even know. This is like the pull of the next 3 podcasts that are being released.
Oh.
Because
this is a teaser.
Like, people are coming to me like, fix my kid. And I'm like, look in the mirror. Like we have to look in the mirror because kids are just picking up on everything, you know? But I just heard this thing, and usually on my podcast, I do a little nugget, you know, my solo episodes. And I was going to use this as a nugget, but I'll say it here. Think less of being in control of your child and think more of being in relationship with your child. And that seems to like really apply here, right?
Totally. I like to say, I didn't make this up, but collaboration invites cooperation, right? So
absolutely.
That's what I try to teach parents, because so it's just a habit, right? Your kid does something, behaves in some way, you react to it in some way that is causing that behavior to continue. That's all it is, like at the core. And I try to say that in a way, not to like blame parents. It's not like, oh, this is all your fault. But I mean it hopefully in a way to like empower parents, because the truth is like, you can't control your kid. You can't control any other human being. Like it's not possible. All
you can, but you have to beat them into submission. So it's like, we're not doing that.
Those aren't the strategies I recommend.
Neither do I.
So you can only control yourself.
Right.
So I say that it comes back to the parent's reaction as a way to hopefully make parents feel empowered that like, okay, like, let me look what I'm doing. And if I could just tweak myself, then that's going to actually solve the problem.
Now, do you find that it's more parents' reactions to how the child is behaving in like, say, like a nighttime situation, you know, a bedtime routine situation?
Yeah.
Or are you saying like, and I'm sure this is age dependent, but what age would that be good, of like inviting collaboration? Because I find that parents are, what do I want to say? A lot of times we can have a conversation like this and there's misinterpretation. And it turns out that they're like, well, what do you want? How do you want to go to bed? And, okay, 10 o'clock sounds good. So they're giving in too much.
Too much. Okay. So yes, what I like to teach parents to do is I want your kid to feel like they have a voice, but ultimately you as the parent are the one that's in control. And so I like to teach parents to talk to their kids about bedtime, but not during bedtime. You're going to talk about this during the day. Give your kids some input in what the bedtime routine looks like. So there's things that we know we have to get done during the bedtime routine. Maybe you ask your kid, okay, what do you want to do first? Brush your teeth or put your PJs on? Just giving your kid the simple act of having a choice helps them kind of feel like they've got some control over it, right? You don't care what they do first. It's fine. So giving them some choice in things that aren't consequential. Like you're not asking them, hey, what time do you want to go to bed? You want to watch 2 movies or 3 movies before bed? No, it's not that. It's just the things that you need to happen. And so I tell parents to talk to your kid about what they like during the bedtime routine. But the bedtime routine doesn't need to be longer than 15 minutes.
Right.
It's just an end of the day time to have nice connection with your kids. Hopefully, a cozy, loving time where you can sit and snuggle and read books, sing songs, whatever you want to do. So letting your child have some input into what those things are and the order in which you do them goes a long way to help them feel like they're kind of like part of the process. And you can even go as far as to jot down those things on a little chart, draw some little icons, tape it on the wall of their room, and then have your kid literally like be the boss.
I use whiteboards. Yeah. I tell parents to use whiteboards. Yeah.
Yeah. And then parent plays dumb. Like, what do we do now? Great job. You put your PJs on. Great job. What do we do? What do we do next? What do we do next? So giving your kid a sense of control over the routine. Now, if your kid chooses, when you work on this little exercise and planning this together in the afternoon, if your kid chooses, if you say, do you want 1 or 2 books? And they choose 2, well, when it's time to actually do bedtime, if your kid's like, I want another book, more pages, the answer can be, we made this bedtime routine. We've got 2 books and we just read the 2 books. So let's take the book that you want to read now. We'll put it on the top of the list for tomorrow. So it's reminding your kid they had control in this and trying to eliminate all that stalling and get things really routine.
Mm-hmm. And then what about, I'm thinking even slightly older, like maybe 8, 9. I used to have this rule of because I know kids get fully decompressed right around bedtime. So oftentimes that's when they want to talk, when they want more connection, when they actually want to talk about their day. But also, you start getting into more dramatic problems. And so my rule of thumb for me, I learned this myself, is I don't have any hard conversations after 7 p.m. If a friend wants to fight about something, if a partner wants to fight about something, we'll take this up in the morning because I'm not getting all riled up. And so does that play into older kids too? I really want to hear this story, but it sounds like this is maybe something better for morning, or when something big comes up right before bedtime, because I think kids can also learn that as a connection stall technique. Right?
Yes.
It's the more dramatic I'm feeling, the more airtime I'm going to get, which they deserve when something dramatic's going on, but not right before bed.
I love that idea of putting kind of time limits around it, and certainly if your kid kind of has a flair for the dramatic or doing that type of thing, I think it's great to plan some time. Maybe it's after dinner, let's say, before you watch a show or do something else to kind of wind down. Maybe you kind of just have some talk time, or maybe that's what you kind of do during dinner and let your child know that it's hard to fall asleep after all that. So let's talk about what's going on with Susie Q or school or whatever the dramatic kind of thing is. But with kids, some kids do like to talk at night, and I don't want to take that away from families. So, even a 3-year-old might want to kind of blabber on about their day. And so I think that's fine as long as it's planned for. Yeah. So if you know that you've got, an 8-year-old who really loves to start talking at the end of the day, then just plan for that. You may have to put him down for bed a little bit earlier so that you have that 10 minutes. Yeah. But if things are really out of control, and this is maybe more with a 5 or 6-year-old where they just won't stop talking. Right. Use a timer. Use a timer. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, all right, buddy, we got our 10-minute chit chat time before lights out. Just use a timer to try to put some controls around it.
Right on. And then what about, so bedtime routine, 15 minutes, which I agree with. I was brutal about sleep with my son. So people would be somebody would call me and I'd be like, oh, I'll call you right back. I'm just going to put Pascal to bed. And I'd call them back in 2 minutes and they were like, that's not, did you drug him? That's not possible. But I was I was a wicked insomniac. So I was brutal about sleep. But what about, 15 minutes, sounds really reasonable, but what about wind down? Because I find that parents are doing, and right now we're seeing a lot online about, proprioception, vestibular movement, these kinds of things that can help sleep, but it looks like roughhousing, swinging, which is awesome for kids who need sensory input. But I feel like parents get I'll hear about a dad roughhousing, throwing the kids around the bed right before bed. And then the mom's like, great. And now they're
right. Perfect.
Now they're not sleeping.
Yeah. So, it totally depends on the child. And I hate to kind of say that, but there's no really blanket way to say what is right or wrong, because it does kind of depend on the kids. I know there's kids with special needs that need lots of sensory input, and that's actually part of the relaxation process. Yep. But I know my kids, it would rile them up. My kids, even giving them a bath right before bed was giving them crack. So I couldn't even give them, they would get so hyper.
That's what I always say. People are like, oh, they need a bath to wind down. I'm like, what? That's water, bubbles.
Right. I'm that is the most fun they've ever had. So I could not do that. I had to do it after dinner before something else, before bedtime. So it kind of depends on the kid. I do think it's important that, obviously kids spend time outside, they're running around, they're getting their energy out. So if we want a rough house with dad and mom and siblings, then there's certainly a time and place to do that. But I think you got to just kind of know your kid well enough to know if it's right before bed or if we really kind of need a little bit of space in between that and the wind down time.
Yeah, I like that too. And I know in your position too, like sometimes when you say it depends on the kid, it feels like such a lame answer, but we have to remember this because in this age of too much information, people are taking, nope, Jamie had Jessica on, the sleep expert said 15-minute bedtime. This is what we're doing, and not really connecting with the kid they have. Like, and if you have a kid, like you said, dramatic, you might have talk time that's an hour. You don't watch a show. You are the show. Like, you know,
you are the show. Yeah.
Like, let's go through all the dramatics. And I think these things, especially when we talk about older kids, like a 5-year-old is planets away from a 10-year-old in what their needs are, what their emotional life is. And so like we can't keep lumping them in, and it really is the kid you have, the kid in front of you. And you know what you have.
Right. And I think it's the same thing. I hear the same thing too with like bedtime and stuff. It's like, what's the right, it's like, there's no right time. I'll give you a window and then I'll tell you what to look for in your specific child, because everybody gives off a sign that they're sleepy, you know, and you've got to know how to read your kid. Sometimes it's super subtle and it takes some training to kind of be able to watch your kid for those signs. But like, you have to look at the kid in front of you, because I could give you, you know, a 30-minute or 45-minute range, which seems, you know, wide, but you have to be able to kind of like look at your kid to kind of adapt their sleep schedule to them.
Yeah. And I think like anything, my new push too is like what's happening today in parenting is a sort of asking kids permission to parent them. You know what I mean? And so I'm really encouraging parents to like, you matter in this relationship. We've kind of become martyrs to our kids with this whole like, I don't know, the gentle parenting has been taken a little too far into permissive parenting. And so parents think they're exhausted. They're curt with their kids. They don't have any energy, and they're letting them stay up too late because they think that's what the child needs. But I'm like, but you matter too. And I can't have you up at midnight watching Netflix because you're going to be trashed the next day. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think parents are not putting their needs too. It's like, even if they play quietly in their room for a while, it's fine. You need to not be touched and to do the rest of your evening too.
Right. 100%. Yes. Parents need that kid-free time in the evening. Sometimes it's the only time you have alone or with your partner. And this, I mean, the effect that sleep has on marriages and relationships is profound. And I don't think people talk enough about that too, but certainly just for individual, like mom, and I'm saying mom because most of this falls on moms, but you know, parental self-care, you know, it's so easy for us to just throw that out the window and care for everybody else. Yeah. But like, that's just not healthy. And I think if most parents are honest with themselves, they don't show up as the best parent that they can be when they are hot trash. Not sleeping, being woken up every 2 hours. Like, it's not okay. And what our kids really need, I mean, you were talking about kind of how gentle parenting has turned into permissive parenting. And I couldn't agree more, but you know, really what our kids need are like calm, loving, firm leaders as parents. And what's going to make our kids feel safe is knowing that we're in charge and we've got them. Like we know what's best for them. You know, we're taking care of them and that they can trust us. And I think a lot of times what happens is, you know, well-meaning parents are kind of trying to just, you know, your kid is stalling and you're thinking, oh, maybe this is the last time they're going to say, can I have some more water? Maybe this is the last page of the book and then they'll finally stop asking. And so we're giving and giving and giving and giving until we explode. Yeah. And then that's what I call mean mommy. And we've all been there.
I call her psycho mommy.
Psycho mommy. Okay.
Psycho mom.
Psycho mom.
Well,
psycho
and
mom.
This is my party line too, Jessica. And I think parents just don't understand this. Like if you continually, this is all unconscious, right? This is all, or subconscious rather, is your child is going to push a boundary to see if you are trustworthy. When you skew the boundary, you literally become untrustworthy to them. So you're going to see wonkiness. And I think what happens is we have really sensitive kids these days. I feel like the pandemic kids just came out of it different, you know, and they're a little more volatile, a little more sensitive, and parents think they should be giving more time and airplay because the child needs that. And but that makes you untrustworthy if you're skewing the boundaries. Whereas you are firm and loving, they're like, I don't like this, but I can trust this. I know what to expect.
Yes, 100%. And when we are turning into mean mommy and flying off the handle and losing our temper, the reason that happens is because our situation is going sideways. No one's listening to us. Everything's out of control. And your kid's feeling the same way. You're just having a temper tantrum when you're in that state as a mom, you know?
Yeah.
So you need to be the one in charge, you know, in a calm and loving and firm way so that your child knows that they can trust you and that you are there to take care of them.
Yeah. And I also think too, it's funny. I have a friend and I cussed her a blue streak because I was like, June, what is up with your sleep? Like you always say you're up with the kids. Like, what the hell are the kids doing? And she said, oh, you know, my little one wanted to chat at 2 a.m. I was like, that is not the time you chat. And she said, well, I want to be there for him. But what happens is she's underslept. So then she goes psycho in the morning. And I was like, you need to be a better person in the morning and be responsive to him in the daylight hours because we don't chit chat at 2 a.m. So, and this is now getting skewed, of course, because social media and like, I just follow all parenting stuff. So I get the good and the bad and the ugly, you know, and there's this whole slew of people now who are like, nope, my kids go to bed whenever they want. This is how our house goes. And I'm like, good for you all, but let's not get on that train, you know, especially if you have to work and your kids are going to go to preschool or kindergarten, you know, it's like.
Yeah. And I've heard you say this before on your podcast too, where it's like, I am not here to tell anybody how their family should be sleeping. I don't care what you're doing in your house, as long as it's working for you and your kids.
Right.
Like I don't think anybody should sleep this way or that way. But if your sleep situation is chaos and you're feeling like your kid is a disaster or you're a disaster, there are tools that can help you. There are people that can help you.
Right.
So yeah, it's no judgment in how people want to do things, but like, you know, if there's not a problem, there's not a problem. But if
I only have judgment when you don't look a little ahead in the future. And so for the first 4 or 5 years of life, you create chaos where nobody has to go to bed at bedtimes. Everything's fine. Then come kindergarten, your kid's got to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And now you're freaking out and look, you know, and like, I don't know what to do. So that's where I get, and not judgy, but I'm like, God, what were you thinking? Like you established a midnight bedtime for your child and now you got to go to bed at 7.
Yeah. Well, and I've helped lots of families where, you know, in like preschool age where kids are having behavioral issues and all kinds of things going on in the classroom. And then really it comes back to, you know, that kid was going to bed at 10 and then waking up every 3 hours and had really never slept through the night in their lives. And they were 4. And once you get that sleep fixed up, I mean, you just start right away hearing from the teachers like, wow, Johnny is really sitting still. Johnny's really able to listen. And so sometimes it's things that might even look like a larger problem, like an ADHD or things like that. It can just, if you just look at kind of the basic human needs, right? We need sleep, we need food, we need shelter, we need air and water. Like if you're missing one of those things, it's a major thing, sleep. So,
well, we were talking about it before we started recording. It's like, we sometimes think of it as a luxury or not necessary. And it's like, it's a nutrient. Like you have to have it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like what is in my heart as a sleep coach is to just change the perception in the world that being a mother means you're never going to sleep again.
Yeah.
It is such bullshit that we are fed from the time we are pregnant. Yes, certainly when you have a newborn, you're going to be exhausted. That's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
That should be a rough few months. And then you should be able to get things back on track, you know, start feeling like a human again. So I just think, and people take it to the nth degree, you know, it's like, well, my kid will eventually stop doing X, Y, and Z or start sleeping through the night. It's like, well, they're 4. Like, how long are you going to wait? I mean,
yeah. When's the eventually going to happen?
Right,
and I also feel like we have, I mean, maybe because I've always been a single mom too, is like, I have to live 90% of my life, like super on track because there's going to be the night he's puking or I have to take him to the hospital and I'm not going to get any sleep. And I can't go into that situation already at a deficit, you know? So.
Right. Well, and everything, you know, when you're not sleeping, everything is worse. It's like there's a dark cloud that is following your life, you know, right? Everything is
it's
more
awful.
Emotional. Everything feels heavier. It just, at least that's the way it feels in my body when I have, you know, not been sleeping well. It just feels like everything is heavy and dark.
Yeah. And it's wild too. I'm so locked into my circadian rhythm. I have to be in bed by like 8:30. And like on Saturday night, I went out and I stayed out till 10. I was like,
whoa, big night.
I wrecked in the morning. I was like, oh, I'm just not on the way I like to be on. So you can imagine what it does to a little one too.
Right, exactly. I mean, they say that the best way to sleep for everybody is to go to bed around the same time and wake up at the same time 7 days a week. Now, as adults, we hear that and go, oh, yeah, right. I'll sleep in on the weekends, or I can stay up late, or I don't need that much sleep, which is wrong. But especially for little kids, it is so important to have that regimented schedule. And it's amazing. I mean, our kids need to be sleeping 10 to 12 hours at night. And when I say that to parents, most of the time the reaction is like, oh my God, like that's a lot. My kid has like kind of lower sleep needs. They usually get like 8 or 9. I'm like, no. Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. 9 hours is a problem.
Yeah,
9 hours
for sure. Yeah. And then what do you think, coming, we're recording this a couple of days after daylight savings time, like how any particular tips or tricks? I feel like this daylight savings, this spring one is easier than the fall one.
Yeah. It's easier because we lost an hour of sleep, and that's easier to kind of integrate that rather than gaining an extra hour in our day. And it's easier because if you think about it, kids are chronically overtired and they're not getting enough sleep. So then when you add an hour into the day in that fall time change, that's really hard for kids to deal with.
Okay.
The springtime change is typically a little bit easier, but certainly going into the summer, blackout curtains are your best friend. Kids will say like, oh, the sun's still up. I mean, certainly if you are a firm parent and you can say, doesn't matter, it's bedtime, that's great. But a lot of kids do need that darkness to sleep.
I don't understand that. Yeah. I guess too, I think it's how you're raised. Like we had brutally early bedtimes when I was a kid. And my mother was like, sun has nothing to do with when you sleep. Sun's out in Alaska 24 hours a day sometimes. And those people go to sleep. She was like, nope. And so I had to say, my son went to bed at 5:30. I went till he was 4. And so I was like, sun doesn't matter. You're tired. Go to bed.
Right. Yeah.
But some kids can't. Yeah.
Yeah. But some kids can't. So I think blackout curtains are great for this time of year.
What's your opinion on sound machines? Because I feel like they do more harm than good.
Oh, okay. I love sound machines. I usually do recommend them to families. Like a white noise machine. It's important that it just kind of sounds like radio static. It's not like the waves coming in.
But what about the theory that like you can just hear the house, like the house, this is your life and this is the house and that's what you heard in utero and then that's what you heard as a baby, no?
It's certainly fine. It depends on the kid.
Yeah.
It depends on the kid and it depends on the parents. Sometimes, and I think it just kind of depends what you start when the kid is little, right?
Gotcha.
So if they're in the crib and you start off with a sound machine, then you kind of need to stick with the sound machine because it does kind of mask that household noise.
Yep.
But I think that's just dependent on the family.
Yeah. Because I know
Definitely
some families
required.
that get screwed, but probably not anymore now that we have smartphones and you can just download an app or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they'd be like, oh my God, I forgot the sound machine. My kid's never going to sleep.
Yeah. Well, it does kind of happen that way. I never had a sound machine until I had kids. And then I kind of got addicted to one from the baby monitor.
Yeah.
Hearing their room.
Oh, yeah.
So now I have an app on my phone that's next to my bed.
Yeah, that's in summertime, like you get used to the air conditioning and then you take that out, in the fall and you're like, the birds are loud.
Yeah. But that's a good point. Actually, even if you don't have a sound machine, even if you have like a ceiling fan or a fan, that can also just provide kind of a nice backdrop for sleep.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jessica. Do you have any like parting words of wisdom or something we haven't talked about that you're like, oh, I need to tell everybody this?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. I think we covered a lot of great stuff today.
Sweet. And so let people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So, I am at Awesome Little Sleepers on Instagram, and that's probably where I spend the most time in the social media world. Also my website, same name, Awesome Little Sleepers. I've got a podcast and a YouTube channel as well.
Sweet. All right, guys, if you've got a big kid who's having trouble, go see Jessica. Because she's going to be nicer than me about it.
I don't know.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, bye, everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.